From whichever side you may be coming to Jajce, you will be following the rivers, Vrbas and Pliva. Their green or blue courses leading you infallibly to the town that nature has so generously endowed with the conditions for human living. Small and Great Pliva lakes in close vicinity of the town, propitious for the development of all water sports, hosts to the World and European Flatwater Kayak and Canoe Championships in 1963, habitats for the rich flora and fauna, are a resting place for the river Pliva to gain force to dive into the Vrbas a few kilometers further. In the very town centre. Before it spreads its wings for its Icarus flight to create a rarely picturesque sight. Between great and small lakes, the Pliva used to propel a score of water wheels which temporarily stopped, but soon, at least some of them, should be put back to their original purpose within the ambitious tourist plans. With the waterfall as its starting point, its strongest driving force, as the Swedish geologist August Heimer put it, Jajce was built in the eminently medieval concept of space. Retaining its harmonious medieval contours to the present day. Between the waterfall line as the foot and the Acropolis-scraped skyline, between two fixed frames, lies the architectural ensemble exposed to spatial effects that feature it, on all sides, as a blend of well-balanced styles. Therefore, in the structure of Jajce, the waterfall is the hub and strongest determinant of its shape. What in the structures of other towns and cities are cathedrals, central mosques or big squares. The waterfall is a precious nature's relic, a great wonder before whose raving beauty many a world traveller has stopped, like the travel writer Evli Chalabi, who in 1660, under a strong impression of the moment, enthusiastically wrote,
"To watch the course of the sea-sized river Pliva, to watch it diving down the rocks is such an interesting and unique sight that one can't help admiring the Almighty Maker and be amazed and wondering."
Owing to its natural conditions and strategic importance, the area of Jajce was settled back in prehistory. Centuries-long presence of the Romans is witnessed by many monuments, of which standing out are the ancient sarcophagi now exhibited in the town park. The most distinctive monument of the Roman epoch is the temple depicting the act of sacrificing a bull, cut into a rock and coloured. With a sculpture of Kotopatis. Altar dedicated to the invincible ancient Persian god Mithras. When in 1396 Duke Hrvoje Vukčić Hrvatinić was mentioned as Conte di Jajce in a chronicle of the Ragusan chronicler Resti, which is the first written mention of the town's name, a fortification had already existed on an elevation above the waterfall. In all likelihood, it was then that, with participation of Dalmatian master craftsmen, the second phase of town's architectural growth started, which would keep vigor right until 1463. The town walls stretch all the way to the Vrbas river. And a gate was built in the walls, later called a Magyar Kapi, with an additional lookout tower. On this north wall, along with towers and a gate, there are battlement parapets which at places are reinforced with stone hooks on which wooden boards were hung for the protection of the shooters. It is presumed, with good reasons, that it was Hrvoje who started developing a unique space, the so-called catacombs, as his own crypt church. Besides the fact that this is a crypt on which the construction of a church was planned, our special attention is attracted by the cut, unfinished human figures and Hrvoje's coat of arms, represented by a hand holding a sword, for a moment enlivened with a hand holding a piece of chalk, at the entrance into the narthex, on the porch wall to the left and to the right of the door. There are similarities in the form to the vaults of St. Zenon's church in Verona, which indicates the existence of a Dalmatian model for its building. A special impetus to Dalmatian influences on the architecture of medieval Jajce was given by the local young men who, wishing to develop their own potentials, went to Dalmatian communes. One of them, Radovan Radoslavčić, learned the trade from the well-known Dalmatian sculptor Juraj Dalmatinac between 1451 and 1453. Several representative Jajce medieval artifacts witness the supplementation of the North and Central European Gothic with the Venetian Dalmatian Gothic. Between 1421 and 1463, during the rule of King Tvrtko II and King Tomasz, on the south wall a new gate was built, the Gothic portal with the royal coat of arms, today the only one preserved coat of arms of the Kotromaniches and the medieval Bosnian state accessible to the general public. Not only because of the Gothic style it was made in, reflecting the highest development level of the West European heraldry, this coat of arms also reflects the general political and architectural development tendencies at the end of the Middle Ages that matched the economic ones: concentration and consolidation around big political capitals. The south citadel wall, with a portal, Romanesque die-style shaped tower windows, parapets and buttresses, was the most beautifully laid part of the Jajce ramparts. At the time of Hrvoje, or of one of the Bosnian kings, Medved Tower was built, whose sturdiness was a reflection of new demands in the fortification building strategy brought about by the use of firearms and artillery. Under the influence of the split late Gothic stone dressing school, the royal palace was built inside the walls. It was recorded in sources in 1457. St. Mary's Church was erected in the 12th or in the 13th century as a Romanesque edifice with rich sculptural decoration. By the mid-15th century, it had been extended and completed in the Gothic style, when a tower was also added on to it. The only preserved church tower from the Bosnian Middle Ages, known as St. Luke's Tower, was proclaimed a cultural monument back in 1892. When in 1459, as the dowry of the Serb princess Jelena Mara Branković, the relics of St. Luke the Evangelist were transferred over here and buried in St. Mary's Church, Jajce became, with papal support, a pilgrimage site. Here, in 1461, the Bosnian king Stjepan Tomašević was crowned by a papal envoy. In 1528, St. Mary's Church was turned into a mosque, which as such stood until 1833, when it burnt out. In the years preceding the fall, dramatic appeals were being sent from Jajce to the west. In the summer and in the winter of 1463 and 1464, respectively, decisive battles for Bosnia were fought here, and the last Bosnian king Stjepan was executed and buried quite possibly on an elevation opposite the waterfall. Since the archaeologist Ciro Truhelka on the 7th of June 1888 excavated a skeleton whose head was separated from the body on the locality called King's Tomb, it is believed that the mortal remains belong to the last Bosnian king. As from then to the present day, the remains have been kept in the local Franciscan monastery museum, in a sarcophagus specially ordered from Vienna. Although St. John the Baptist's Church is not located within the historical nucleus of Jajce, the importance of making pilgrimage to the church, its history and development, are inseparable from the development of the historical nucleus of Jajce. The belief that the pilgrimage to St. John cures the possessed by the devil brings together on the 24th of June to Podmilace, 7 kilometers from Jajce, the people of different religions from all over Bosnia. The custom was discontinued only at the most difficult times of war, when the church was pulled down. Still, today some pilgrims come to visit dressed in folk costumes, so this is the place where various forms of heritage of Bosnia and Herzegovina are maintained. With regard to the attractiveness of the place and the number of visits, St. John's at Podmilace near Jajce is known as the Small Bosnian Lourdes. At places such as Podmilace, a particular form of folk piety was nurtured, rooted in the centuries-long Glagolitic tradition, for which the crown evidence is provided by the luxuriously designed Glagolitic Missal of Hrvoje Vukčić, written in the early 15th century, when the Bosnian Duke ruled over Split itself. The Ottoman rule over Jajce, established after the campaigns of the powerful empire towards Central Europe, had been crushed on its walls as late as 1527, combines the basic principles of the private and the public life with the customs and forms found. The town basic plan, layout and directions of communications remained unchanged, but the public, business and private residential zones were clearly separated. The new town appearance emerged with the erection of 8 mosques, 2 madrasas, a number of mektebs or primary schools, guest houses, a tekke and a clock tower, known under that name since the distance past, although no one has ever seen a clock on it. Below the citadel, the Dizdar Fortress Commander's Mosque was built, also known as Women's Mosque, and nearby the Dizdar Mosque, the Okića Mosque was reconstructed. The city mosque, known also as Sultana Esma's Mosque, was built in 1749 and 1750 as a single-space mosque with a slender and elaborate minaret, the best developed in Bosnia. Currently, works are underway on its rehabilitation from the war devastations raging between 1992 and 1995. Residential houses cluster together on the slopes towards the citadel. The geometry of the buildings is simple and recognizable. Stone ground floor, projecting over it the upper floor of half-timbered construction, and above it a high pyramidal roof. The roofs are steep, hipped and covered with shingles. With the organic bond of the built forms and nature, the location of the buildings in space, their interrelations, and the choice of materials, the Ottoman period lent Jajce its recognizable image, despite the fact that a large number of public buildings from the Ottoman period have disappeared. A significant part of that cultural heritage, like the recently reconstructed Hafizadic's drinking fountain and Omirbegović's house, makes up the tourist potential of Jajce, which needs life to be inspired into it. Right today, we should remember that Jajce won the flattering title of the tidiest tourist place in Yugoslavia, that over 300,000 tourists visited the town annually, and that every 5th resident of Jajce lived on the income from tourism. The successful example of fitting monumental heritage into the tourist supply of Jajce proves the town's regaining its former tourist glory, represented in the conservation of the public bath from the Ottoman period and its functional fitting into the hotel construction located in the very center of the town. Some touches of what from historical distance is called Europeanization were present in Jajce back before the establishment of Austro-Hungarian monarchy's administration in 1878, but it was from that year that changes in terms of closer contacts with European standards were carried out in a systematic way. With the medieval matrix retained, with a slight oriental touch, built were modern buildings of the then prevailing European eclecticism, or somewhat more exciting form of the succession. The image was enriched with the structures of the new style expressions in the spirit of the European historicism. To a degree, paradoxically, the Austro-Hungarian period is the least preserved architectonic part of this ensemble. The finance building, the Sarac house, or Šarenica, and the old primary school were built late in the 19th century in a row, making up a building ensemble representing an example of Austro-Hungarian architecture. Then the industrial zone was established on the Pliva right bank and the Vrbas left bank. Industry, road network, education facilities and tourist supply make part of a unique idea about the presentation of the magnificent historical, cultural and natural wealth. In such an atmosphere, in 1904 the Society of Nature Friends was founded in Jajce, and in 2000, following a deeply rooted tradition, the Society for the Protection of Cultural, Historical and Natural Values of Jajce, the first post-war society of this type in Bosnia-Herzegovina. Endeavours to preserve and show the glorious heritage continued after 1918. At that time, new structures were built in Jajce. With the historicism expressions in the Orthodox Virgin's Church, destroyed in the 1992 war actions, of which by coincidence only the tower survived. So, besides St. Luke's Tower, Jajce got the Tower of Virgin's Church, like a cursed mast, patiently awaits the architect's hand to restore its nave, sunk in the tempest of war. Here are the projects trying to achieve the cosmopolitan spirit of the time, adapting to what is called genius loci. The functionalism of Korunović's design for the Sokol athletic club, taking into consideration the elements of tradition, resulted in the representativeness that must have attracted the attention of the delegates to the second session of the Avnoj, the political body constituted on the 29th of November 1943 as the supreme legislative and executive representative body of the future state of Yugoslavia. Its former glory was revived, this time as the place of foundation of a state, which stormily broke up in the wars waged from 1991 to 1998. Grown up below the fortress, by the waterfall, in the open-air museum, the residents of Jajce are aware that they live in a town belonging to the World Cultural Heritage, the town composed of 9 historical layers. It is for these reasons that this small area offers an unusual possibility to grasp at a glance as many as 4 empires: Roman, Byzantine, Ottoman and Austro-Hungarian, 3 kingdoms, Bosnian, Hungarian and Yugoslav, 3 world monotheistic religions, Christianity, Orthodox and Catholic, Islam and Judaism, the most various architectural styles and customs of living. Scattered on the surrounding elevations or in the town itself, the cemeteries of Jajce, Jewish, Muslim, Orthodox Christian and Catholic make a double bond between the past and the present, between the living and the dead respectively. Therefore, Jajce witnesses that a city can be healthy, physically, mentally and culturally, only when it emerges as product of man's actions in accordance with the basic principles of man's architecture. A pattern of time hovering over the entire ensemble also impresses as a powerful cohesive means between individual structures, as their age does not make them less appealing, but on the contrary, it adds to their museum beauty. The light, colors, waters, vegetation, whiteness of the polished pebbles, the age of stones laid precisely into the patterns fixed long ago, the bell chimes and echoes of Muslim prayers from the minarets, market days and fairs, arouse some internal joy that can be felt only at the encounter of the authentic, since the discrepancy between the beauty of forms and the true life here does not seem to be unbridgeable. To this all, the loud noise of the waterfall, the sound effect enriching the architectonic impression with an unusual tune produced by the flowing violin bow being drawn across the 22 meters tall dripstone screen. The best way to protect this unique ensemble is to include the historical core of Jajce in the UNESCO list of World Heritage. The Swedish organization Cultural Heritage Without Borders took the most important pioneer steps in this process. Then there are the British Council, the Ministry of Culture and Sport and the Ministry of Regional Planning and Environment of the Government of the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, the Society for the Protection of Cultural and Historic Values of Jajce, as well as the Italian architect with international renown, Andrea Bruno. Reconstruction and rehabilitation interventions on 14 monuments of culture were carried out in accordance with the cutting-edge professional standards, which revitalized a significant part of the Jajce cultural heritage and reverted it to its original condition, contributing to the high level of authenticity of the overall ensemble, whose beauty should be preserved as mankind's heritage in the name of the most noble goals.